everybody. My name's John.
I'm Bob. He's Bi.
They're Butch.
And together we are the Butch and the Bi.
And this week, we had a good time watching Just a Little Cat.
Just a little guy. This week we had a good time watching Orphans.
Okay, Batman. Do you think that Batman goes to an orphanage? I was gonna say orphan mill. Like people go to like a shelter, like an animal shelter, and like looks for orphans to train to be vigilantes. We had a good time watching the next chapter in the Shrek cinematic universe.
Mm-hmm. We had a good time watching some absolutely beautiful animation.
We had a good time watching a movie about John Mulaney getting everything he wants and failing miserably at it.
Yeah.
We had a good time this week watching Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which released in 2022 and is a continuation of the Shrek cinematic universe. That wasn't even a joke. One of the wildest things about this movie to me was their Marvel Studios logo for Dreamworks, because it's a Dreamworks movie.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was just all snippets of like Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon and Shrek, and I'm just like, man, the house that Shrek really built. Like Freddy Krueger built New Line Cinemas and Shrek built Dreamworks.
Mm-hmm. It really did. With his two big ogre hands, he built that studio.
He sure did.
That was such a weird period of time.
When there was an ogre building a movie studio, yeah, that was a very odd period of time.
Just all of the brand integration stuff.
Yeah, well, I think the interesting thing about the original Shrek is just that, like, there wasn't a whole lot of competition for Disney at the time. And I mean, honestly, it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for shenanigans on the corporate side of Disney, because it came out after the Renaissance, the Disney Renaissance of the 90s. And like that's a specific level of petty in that movie, because we're talking about a different movie entirely, but Lord Farquaad is specifically based off of the CEO at the time, not Bob Iger, who was the CEO of Disney before.
I don't remember.
God, I've watched enough of those amusement park history videos. That channel's so cool.
Yeah.
What's it called, like Yesterworld or something?
I think so, yeah.
Anyways, this movie is not that movie. It is instead a better movie in almost every way, shape, or form, but still noticeably a kid's movie. And that was the thing that you were very excited about this movie.
Yes.
And you enjoyed this movie a lot.
Yes.
I was sort of excited about this movie and enjoyed the art style a lot, but was very taken out of the movie in the fact that I think we've been spoiled with animation, both in the quality and look of the animation, but also in the storytelling happening in the animation, that this felt very, and it's not like bad. It's not that it is a bad story. It just, to me, it was a very basic story. So it wasn't as engaging to me, but it was a very fun movie, and definitely if I'd been a kid when I saw this would have been like my favorite movie.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to really like about this movie.
Yeah, so we have Puss in Boots.
Played again by Antonio. Hi, I'm Antonio Banderas. It's Antonio Banderas.
Yes.
Who is joined by his ex-lover. Was it not Kitty Galore? That's a James Bond villain.
Kitty Soft
Kitty
Paws.
Do you think that was a reference to Kitty Galore?
Probably.
Yeah.
People who make movies are generally nerds about movies, so yeah.
Yeah, that's true. People that make podcasts about movies are generally nerds about podcasts about movies too.
Yeah.
Not really. I watch like 3. I listen to 3. I don't watch podcasts. You don't watch podcasts. Who makes video versions of podcasts?
That's just a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
That's a video essay.
Who would do that? Wild. Selma Hayek plays Kitty, who last time we saw her, did we ever do an episode on Eternals? I think we did an episode on Eternals.
I feel like we did.
I sure do remember creating promo art for it.
Yeah.
So we had to have. Yeah, it was when we were really like on it about things. But she's great in this. She's a lot of fun. And then he's got a little doggy friend that he meets. Well, it's a dog that is disguised as a cat, played by Harvey Julian. I'm hoping I pronounced that right. I probably didn't. Playing Perito, which is a little... Is he a Chihuahua? What is he?
I think he's, yeah.
It's like a Chihuahua mix.
Yeah, I think he's a Chihuahua mix. I mean, that Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
a
something
mutt.
in
He's a little dog.
yeah, he's a tiny breed mutt. And I have to say I really relate to that character. Because he's an absolute goofball, but also when he needs to be very sincere and helpful, he is. And that's I feel like people meet me and they're either immediate, like they meet me and they meet me at a professional capacity where I'm very on it and on top of things, or they meet me when I'm an absolute goofball and there's like, oh, this is an absolute goofball. And then like something happens and I'm like, I'm here for emotional support. And they're like, oh, you're actually really good.
You know which character eats a lot of things in this movie?
Who eats the most things?
It's Jack Horner.
Mm.
The villain of the movie. It's John Mulaney's character.
Yeah,
Which,
I was gonna say I think Papa Bear eats more things as he has like porridge.
really?
I don't does
They make way more fat jokes about Jack Horner than they do.
Oh,
about
I mean, yeah,
bears.
of course they do. But I don't remember him actually eating things other than like
Didn't he
the
eat all
initial
the
plum.
pies.
We see him sticking his thumb in and get a plum,
Oh,
and he
okay.
eats that and says this batch is good. But I don't remember him eating much else until he like eats something later in the movie, and it.
Well, he does is it the drink me or the eat me to make
Yeah, it's
himself
the eat
big?
me. Yeah. So it is a very funny concept of like I'm collecting all of these different magical items,
That
and
was very good.
it makes for
This is
some
a
really
very
fun
D&D
bits.
character.
Yeah, he's got it's another fun, just like continuing Dreamworks poking at Disney with his Mary Poppins bag and umbrella.
Yeah, Mary Poppins bag, and then like the he turns was it a pumpkin into a Cinderella cart?
Yeah.
And then yeah, there's a number of good things later on in the movie that's been from that. But we also get Florence Pugh playing Goldilocks, which there's a bit of a canon inconsistency here. In the first Shrek movie, Goldilocks is having the three bears arrested as fairy tale characters. Like, so what's this? What is this? What's this new universe? I need a correction. I need some sort of movie to fix it.
That isn't. I hadn't thought about that.
Shrek
It's such a small bit of that movie, so I forgot about it. But you're saying that I'm like, oh, that's
immediately. Like the second I was like, oh, they're in this. Oh no, what happened? What was the trajectory?
Oh my gosh, that's so. I still need to finish Dimension 20 Never After, but in that there's the idea of like multiple stories and multiple versions of stories for characters. So I'm now my own little headcanon is just that this is a Never After scenario where like this is a different story version and the characters are reborn.
I mean, again, they kids movie. The expectation of continuity is little for me, considering they've done like what 4 Puss in Boots movies on Netflix or something.
I don't remember how many. I feel like there was maybe a really cheap TV show. There's a show. I don't know, but there were.
They spun out Puss in Boots hard, but it was like directed directly at kids and after I was a kid. So that's why this movie I think popped off. The majority of the reason is that the animation style is up there with Into the Spider-Verse, up there with things like when I think of like that start of combining 2D and 3D animation, the big one for me is the Peanuts movie that came out in I think 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
I love that movie. The movie's great. The animation's really fun because that's where they decide, we're not going to try to 3D model Charlie Brown's wiggly little hair. We're just going to do line work over that. And I think because that was Sony Pictures too. So I really have to imagine that started down the path of stuff that they were doing with Into the Spider-Verse.
Another one, Mitchell's versus the Machines, has that.
Yeah, a lot of the popping out and stuff.
Yeah, I love it so
much. Was that
much.
Also a DreamWorks picture?
I can't remember.
I know it was released on Netflix, but it came out during the pandemic.
Yeah, I can't remember which studio Mitchell's versus the Machines is. But I love that was one of the first like teaser trailer for this movie came out, and that was mostly his fight with the hill troll that he wakes up. And I was just like, oh, things that are farther back are moving at a lower frame rate. And I was just like, oh, the depth of field, oh, the whiteness of the milk. And just, oh, I was so excited for that.
We're dumb. It was Sony because it was also written by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. So,
okay.
Or they were producers on it.
Mitchell's versus the Machines.
Yes, Mitchell's versus the Machines, but they are the directors for Spider-Verse.
Yeah. I'm really delighted by this animation style. And that is like playing with frame rate for like, I love that. That's a thing that's so cool about the latest Spider-Verse, and it's cool in here too. You see like a big thing moving at a really low frame rate in the distance, and that's just, it gives it such personality. And I also especially like it because I feel like like we know that motion smoothing is a thing like TVs can do, but there are specific times where I'm like, this is just animated too smoothly in some things, and it looks weird.
Yeah.
This is so weird, but think about it every time I watch the movie, which was way too many times. Over the Hedge animated movie.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so that there was one little point where the raccoon grifter character is doing a movement that was just smoother than everything else in the movie, and it bugged me every time I saw it. I was like, there are too many frames there
It's
or
like,
something.
Andrew Garfield's legs in No Way Home when he catches Mary Jane. It's one of the things that throws me out of that movie completely is towards the end of when the Statue of Liberty stuff is happening. He's going to catch Mary Jane, or Michelle
MJ.
Jones, yeah, and the way he catches her is like, oh, great, great, great. Like he learned from his past mistake of letting his girlfriend smack the ground. That's why Gwen Stacy's middle name is Snap, and so, but he catches MJ and he lands on his feet, and it's way too quick. Like his leg should have impaled his torso, kind of thing. And someone did on YouTube. They like reanimated it and just slowed down his they bent his knees enough so that he could kind of like it's kind of like the idea of Superman catching someone, like he has to like decelerate with them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But anyways, this movie's a lot of fun. I do like that each of the characters has a different kind of, I would say, combat style, because this movie is a big, like, it's a race to the thing. It's the race to the MacGuffin. It's the last shooting star to make a wish on, and they have to follow this map that, depending on who is holding the map, it changes what the challenge is. And these challenges are like typical kind of fantasy. Think like the Bog of Stench from Labyrinth. It's that kind of stuff, but it's tied personally to the characters.
I really love that map
Yeah.
thing. That was so cool. And then when they started using it to their advantage in fights, but I also them just both the cats taking the map and be like, oh, all these dark things, and then they give it the dog. And just like, oh, we can go through a pocket full of posies. And it's just more and more relatable stuff. It's just like, yeah. And yeah, it is a really cool. And I like the little star eye animation thing when they pick up the map.
Yeah. Well, also they like just they play into, so I mean, from Shrek 2, where Puss in Boots first appeared, the whole like him using his cute eyes to distract. I love that that's apparently just been a big enough thing of his character that they like played it up hard in this movie with that dog. They're like, that dog can't make that face to save its life, and then it does, and it's so adorable. But yeah, it's but I do like that the cats have a very specific kind of, like, they have the Puss in Boots style, like fencing and being very swift and nimble fighting style. And then you've got the Three Bears and Goldilocks, who are much more team oriented and much more kind of like bruiser style. I got flashbacks to Colossus's and Wolverine's fastball special in the comics, where Colossus picks up Wolverine and tosses him so he can do a thing, and that's a lot of what they do with Goldilocks in this. And then you've got the bag of tricks that Jack Horner has of different fantasy character tools and weapons.
But we haven't even mentioned the Tumblr favorite, Wolf Death.
Okay. I know too many furries now at this point in my life. They're all virtual. They're not real furries. None of them have the money to pay for actual suits.
Yeah, they're the ones who are like, I'm gonna be in a fursuit in VR chat because no way can I afford. Have I told you the coolest fursuit story I've ever heard? It was someone who got a chameleon suit, but with mood ring material.
Wait, I'm sorry. Hold on. A chameleon suit? Do you mean they were dressed like the Rango movie, like the lizard?
No.
Or is it a suit
like their persona was a chameleon, and they got it was scale mail, but with mood ring material, so it changed color with their body temperature.
Oh no! So it was just bright red the entire time?
I have no idea, but it was like, that's such a. I love that there are people who have enough money to bring weird things like that to life, and there are people who make those things. But yeah, you know too many furries.
I know too many furries, and I heard from, like, I saw from a good number of them, and then online, just like, oh my god, this is the best villain in a movie. And I'm like, after watching the movie, I'm like, he was cool. Like, the fight with him is really cool, especially at the end there. But not the best villain.
Yeah, not the best villain. I think they utilized him extremely effectively. Like he
Yeah.
was very, the whistle and the way the rest of the sound would happen, like sound design for him was very ominous and it was very cool. I mostly saw him just described as a chaotic death deity because that's the thing is it's like he's mad at Puss for not treasuring his life because
Yeah.
I like that angle on death is like
Well, it seemed like in general, this version of death had a thing out for cats. Like it wasn't just Puss. It was very much that like he makes the statement about how it's unnatural
mm-hmm.
that like cats have 9 lives, and so that was the thing too. Is I love that kind of throughout the movie you're questioning whether or not he's real, and then at the end you get Kitty going like, "Oh my God, you're actually being chased by the personification of death. I thought you were just abandoning me again." And I
Thought
really
you were being dramatic.
yeah, it was a very good play on the creator's part to just have it be this vague like, is this just a really weird middle-aged story like or like coming of age
mm-hmm.
like accepting death kind of thing, because that's the other thing, it's Puss in Boots and he's reached his 9th life, and that's kind of the catalyst for him wanting to get this wish. He wants to re-wish a dumb wish, by the way. He only wants to get back his 9 lives. He doesn't want to wish for more lives, which is the loophole for like you can't wish to live forever. But then it's like, okay, I don't wish to live forever, but I wish to have like 5 cats worths of lives or something. I'm just saying he's a smarter cat than that. I'm disappointed in him.
No, that's Puss is a little bit himbo in the way of like he is, but it's one of those like smart and very specific way himbo, and then like everything else you're just so dumb about. Like you are good at one thing, like fighting and being all like you have some sort of strategic mind, but you're so dumb in so many other ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is this version of Puss in Boots, because the original version of Puss in Boots is kind of like, yeah. This version of Puss in Boots is very much like, oh, this is what Warner Brothers wanted Pepe Le Pew to be, but instead Pepe Le Pew is super rapey, and this one's not as rapey as the original Puss in Boots. So that's a fun development.
Yeah. There's one of the elements of the story is Goldilocks' relationship through the 3 bears,
Yeah.
with her being an orphan and then bringing her into their family. And she's kind of coming to terms. Her lesson to learn is that she did get a really loving second chance at a family.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and that plays into the whole kind of, except for Jack, the whole, well, and even no, Jack even had his wish technically. So each of them had their wish of like, Kitty Softpaws wanted someone she could trust. Puss in Boots wanted a life worth living. The Goldilocks wanted a loving family. I have to imagine, because the bears were there specifically to support. They didn't have a specific wish, but in my head, their wish is that Goldilocks accepts them as her family. And then Jack Horner's wish is to have all the magic, and they all have their wishes throughout the entire movie. It's just the order in which the order and speed at which they realize that is what results in them kind of failing at getting the wish, because they end up giving up the wish. They end up tearing up the map, and it creates another shower of falling stars for people to wish on. But Jack Horner specifically gets just sucked into his Mary Poppins bag because he's a bit of a, like, he should have realized that you already have all of these magical things you've collected through nefarious means. But yeah, no, the Goldilocks and 3 Bears subplot it's weird because I haven't seen any of these other movies outside of the first. I think I saw like the first 3 Shrek movies, and those movies are so focused on family. Whereas this movie at first is not, and then there's that family arc right there, and I'm like, okay, there it is. Because you've got Olivia Colman as Mama Bear, you've got Ray Winstone as Papa Bear, and Samson Ko as the baby bear, and like they have just such a natural family dynamic. Like Papa Bear is very much, he reminds me of the dad in Stranger Things, the Wheeler, Mr. Wheeler, where he's very just like, I'm just here to make sure nobody dies, but I'm also not great at doing that. The baby bear and Goldilocks fight the entire time. And then, yeah, the Mama Bear is the Mama Bear, and she wants everyone to be happy, and she's trying to, like, she's like, we're helping Goldilocks. Like, she has told us that she wants a family, and we're going to help her get it.
Yeah, that
even
was
if it hurts us.
that is I think when Goldie like the first like tap is like, I just told you all that I don't think of you as much of like as a real family, and that my wish would be to have like a human family or what. And Mama is hurt, but she's like, all I want is for you to be happy. So I will do this even though this is hurting me. And yeah, I definitely cried at that point.
Yeah. It was, and then also just Puss's and Kitty's relationship, because we find out in the course of the movie that they were engaged to be married and that he left her at the altar, but that she actually never even showed up to the altar. So nobody left anybody anywhere because neither of them committed to it. And so it leads to this, like, I don't know, this really fun game between the two of them of trying to like one up each other. If anything you can do, I can do better, kind of thing. And then we get this really sweet moment between oh god, what's the dog's name? Perito and Puss, where he's explaining like why he needs the wish and how he had left her at the altar. Well, not even left her at the altar, he never went into the church. And she overhears this, and we see that heel turn from her of Puss in Boots as just being the selfish, egotistical legend. That was another big part of the movie, was Puss in Boots and other people's relationship to him as it pertains to the legend of Puss in Boots and the hero, the vigilante, the take from the rich, give to the poor thing that they stole from Robin Hood. And then versus the man, the cat man that Kitty apparently saw at some point. And so yeah, we get a little relationship.
It's a lovely relationship. It also has a bit of the philosophy of life and infinite versus finite life, which also I feel like was expressed really well in The Good Place, which is like you have an afterlife, and at some point you choose to end that also. And it's about things having an ending is what makes the happenings mean something.
Yeah.
And so he's because he's on his last life, he's become a different person. And that is, he's becoming more himself and less of the bluster and bravado. And she's seeing that, and that's why she's willing to give it another chance. Yeah. Perito his dream is to be a therapy dog. He's training for it. And he does it when Puss has been chased by death and is freaking out.
He has that anxiety attack. That's when he tells him about the whole thing.
Yeah, and
there's
Perito,
just that part where he starts petting him.
Yeah, Perito is just like looks at him and is just calm and there for him. He's like, there's nothing I can say. I just need to be here. And it helps. His calm helps Puss's body get back down to a normal. And it's such a sweet moment. I felt so many feelings in that moment.
It's really fascinating that probably the most completely developed character in the movie from the beginning that didn't have much development after, because it didn't need any, was Perito. All of the other characters have these big arcs that they go on, even Jack. Perito, from the jump, is I want to be your friend and I want to help you, and spends the whole movie doing that. Doesn't need to learn a lesson. He is just there to be it's funny because he's the comedic relief character, but he's the straight man also, because everyone else is obsessed with getting his wish. And because he's not obsessed, he doesn't have a wish. He doesn't have a want.
He already got it. He's got two friends.
Going to challenge him. The more that you want that wish, the harder the map is going to make it for you to get. And so it's this, like, we see that the big roadblock for Goldilocks and the Bears is their cabin that they all met in when she broke in and started like too hot, too cold, they get stuck there because they're like, oh, we're home. And the Bears get back into their kind of rhythm, and Goldilocks starts to fall into that rhythm because she's a part of their family, even though she hasn't accepted it. But because nostalgia is because what was it? Nostalgia Woods or something was the name of it. So like it was very on the nose with some of the kind of the temptations of the characters depending on who was holding the map.
Like when Puss gets trapped in the cave.
Yeah, and it's just the reflections of his previous lives, and they're all a little more egotistical each time, kind of thing. And that's interesting to me though, because like Puss in Boots has had like 7 things that he's been in, so you would think he'd be a little more developed as a character. That tells me is there was nothing in those 7 previous iterations. Because another thing, but I mean, in his first appearance in Shrek 2, there's not. We're talking about this like it's the MCU, and I love that. In Shrek 2, there's no development to his character. He's just there to be. He is the legend Puss in Boots to help Shrek save the day and save Fiona from Prince Charming and the Fairy Godmother. And then whatever they do with him after clearly doesn't do anything. Like, it's just there to be a product for kids to watch because, I get it, capitalism.
Yeah.
But this one at least actually is like, okay, we're going to tell a story that I think is both for parents and for kids, like, really good. Because from one side of it, you have parents who, I mean, hell, we're approaching 30 and we're like in that, like, man, we're on the back half of that thing called life. And that's rough to deal with in some capacity. And then for kids, it's that thing of no matter how, because I think kids have this tendency a lot of the time to be like Pareto, where they want to support and they want to make people happy because they like the feeling that they get when people are happy. But it's that kind of lesson of like, you can't be the solution. Whatever the situation is, the person who is affected for the most part needs to want to change, want to get help, want to grow, want to do something. So in that way, it was a little bit of an interesting, like, there were a lot of paternal stories in this, not like morals, like, like any fairy tale has a moral to the story. This one felt very relationship focused.
Yeah, because one of the things when Puss is explaining his history with Kitty, Burrito's like, why don't you just tell her that?
Why don't you just communicate, dipshit?
Yep.
Yeah. That's my response to a lot of people and a lot of things they say to me. I'm like, why don't you just open your mouth and talk like adults?
That you supposedly are.
You apparently are. I don't know how you're paying bills if you can't have a conversation. I throw it back to Fred Rogers. If it's mentionable, it's manageable.
You take away a thing's power by talking about it.
Yes, the crossover between Fred Rogers and Pennywise the Clown. I love it. And Freddy Krueger. It's weird that all 3 of them have the same weakness. If you talk about Fred Rogers, he gets weaker. Let's face it, that man had probably little ego. So yes, being praised or talked about the way that he is was probably something that he was like,
yeah,
no, don't do that.
This isn't a. He's another like Ted Lasso thing. He's like, it's not about me.
It's the Pittsburgh way.
Yeah.
That's the lesson we got from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish.
It's the Pittsburgh way.
It's the Pittsburgh way. Bob, do you have any closing thoughts about Puss in Boots?
The milk looked so good. Like, it looked so flat in a way that made it look so appealing. I was like, that looks like really good milk.
Very, very pure.
Yeah, it was pure and it popped against other things.
You know who would have really loved that milk? The bad guys in Get Out. That girl would have been all over that milk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing thoughts?
I do. John Mulaney really shouldn't be doing voice acting because he only has his voice and it's very noticeable. I loved everything else, like, but it was like, and it was fine, but it was very much like, I'm like, man, he's got the one thing, and that's fine, I guess. But like,
yeah,
you know what he was? He was just Spider-Ham again. He had a bag of magical things he could pull out of his ass. And
he was just the
people with.
completely. He was the perfect hateable person, and he never actually had anything hard in his life, and he was just spoiled and
it wasn't enough.
Entitled. Yeah. So
yeah,
he had such good little paws.
Yeah.
Oh, she's doing the paws with her eyes.
Yeah. Oh, they're stare off.
Yeah, they're stare off
yeah.
with the commentary by Pareto. It's very funny. It's like, oh, the paws are getting in on it.
Oh my God! Wait, we didn't talk about Pareto's best feature, the censorship. My man had a mouth on him like a sailor.
Well, considering his traumatic childhood, I'm sure he heard those words a lot.
Yeah, no, it was just wild to hear it in a kid's movie.
And yeah.
And it wasn't even like censored in the way that kids' movies typically censor things, where it like cuts to the next scene or like there's a truck that passes by.
Mm-hmm.
It was very specifically the censorship noise that you hear on like TV show and news and like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was very fun.
Yes. Yeah, we get this moment where he's talking about his childhood traumas.
Oh
no, yes, that is also very sweet, and they're immediately charmed by him. But when the three of them are walking and he's talking about his childhood, and the two cats are just horrified, and it's very much like, oops. Sometimes you talk about your childhood, and your friends are like, "Dude, that's all trauma," and you're like, "What?
What? No, I'm fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, fine.
I got a sweater out of it."
Yeah.
It grew into the sock.
Oh, it was just, yeah.
It grew. It's so sad. Oh, but he found his friends.
Yeah. You ever got a new sweater?
Yeah.
Well, Bob, they can find you on the internet
At A Small Frog Art on Instagram and Patreon, or you can just go directly to asmallfrogart.com and buy things.
Yeah. They can also sign up for your Patreon and do all that sort of stuff. And then you can go to www.thebutchandtheby.com. That's A-N-D, not ampersand, because the internet does not like ampersands. You can find all of our episodes, and you can find the links to all of our social medias and stuff. Thanks. Bye.
Butch.